Hello, Internet. It is I, Malik Aaron, and welcome back to Box Office Recaps. This is part two of my summer 2023 recap. Part one went over all of the winners, or as I call them, the non losers, all the movies that I thought succeeded and didn't embarrass themselves. And this video is not that, because this video is going over all the movies that I thought did mediocre or were failures, but on a smaller scale, where they weren't like super expensive. And the thing is, I could have made this video just about all the losers of summer 2023 because, man, this summer had so many duds. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. But the thing is, if I made that video, it would be like 2.5 hours long, minimum. I'm not about to put you or myself through that. So instead I decided to split it to where this video is about all the smaller losers. And in part three, we're going over all the big losers, the expensive losers. Movies like The Flash and Indiana Jones and Blue Beetle. Those movies. I'm saving those for part three. So that's what we're doing. So, and the thing is, I'm gonna have to speed through this a little bit because there's way too many movies to talk about. So, yeah, we gotta hurry along. So, let's begin. So, May 2023, the same weekend Guardians of the Galaxy 3 came out, Love Again came out for some reason. And this whole movie's identity was pretty much, oh, Celine Dion is a plot point, and that's it. That's its whole identity. It had like no marketing, and I was just like, is this movie even gonna release? But it did, and no one watched it. Literally, opened with like 2.3 million, made like 6 million total, 10 million worldwide. Like that is embarrassing for a wide release. And like it had a good second weekend, but at that point, too little, too late, and then it disappeared. At literally the end of May, it was gone. So I don't have much to say about this. I had a feeling it was gonna bomb, and it bombed, and no one remembers it. So yeah, moving right along to May 12th. Really, I can just label May 12th as like it's the whole weekend of May 12th was just a waste. It was a nothing weekend. It was a total nothing burger. Like the only news that really happened was that Guardians 3 had a really strong hold. Besides that, it was pitiful. So let's go over all these movies. The biggest of the bunch, I'm saying that, that's not exactly a compliment here, but the biggest of the bunch was Book Club, The Next Chapter. A classic example of a sequel that no one asked for, but was made anyway. And surprise, surprise, it did terrible. Opened with like 6.6 million, made like 17 million domestically, 28 million worldwide. For comparison's sake, the original Book Club, which came out like 5 years prior, had a final total of 68 million domestically, 105 million worldwide. So, like, the drop up from like the first to the second movie was like, what, 75%? Like three-fourths? Which is just absolutely just wild to me. But I thought it would do like a little bit better than this, like just like a little bit, because it did came out like on Mother's Day. Like this is a mom movie right here. But nah, the moms just decided to stay home. And yeah, it just died out there. So not much else to really say about it, but the fact that it had a very pitiful performance for a sequel. So yeah, moving right along to Fool's Paradise. This movie had no marketing at all, despite a very loaded cast here. I mean, look at all these names. But the problem is no marketing and no one gave a shit about it. And it only opened with like less than 500,000, made like less than a million. And that's all I'm going to say about it. So moving on. I guess I could mention Blackbird, but I didn't make a prediction video for that. Even then, it didn't exactly do well. It didn't set the world on fire. Then we got Hypnotic. This movie was from a no-name distributor that I've never heard of before. Catch Up Entertainment. Like, what type of name is that? And all it really had was like TV ads, and that was it. Like, they just, like, I don't know what the plan was. This movie was put on the schedule like 2 months in advance. 2 months. That's barely enough time to even like make a marketing campaign. And the movie had no hype, no buzz. And then, I mean, some people may have been initially hyped because it's Robert Rodriguez. I mean, the dude has a fan base, but no one showed up at all. I opened with like 2.4 million, made like 4.5 million domestic. Like, its legs were just pretty. Ooh, I mean, look at this. The numbers speak for themselves. 66%, 94%. It was gone after 3 weeks. It vanished. So, yeah, and the movie cost like $65 million. So this movie was a total loss for everyone involved. And I'm not exactly surprised because, again, the movie, it was literally just thrown out there. Like, it never had like a hype machine, backing it up. It just was thrown on the calendar just to be there. It released, no one watched it, and that was the end of that. So, yeah, that was Hypnotic. Then now we have Rally Road Racers, which, like Fool's, what was it, Fool's Paradise? Yeah, Fool's Paradise had zero marketing, and it only opened like with a 419,000, and then it just died very fast after that. Like, the end of May, gone, poof, with like 711 million, 711 $1,000. Not shocked at all because no marketing, no one knew this thing existed except me, and that was only because I had to make a video on it. Like, no, I'm not shocked. I wasn't shocked about this result at all. So, yeah, that was May 12th, a weekend to forget. And we're going to move right along, skipping past May 19th, going straight to May 26th, where we have a similar situation where there's just a bunch of movies came out and none of them did well. Although Little Mermaid at least had a somewhat substantial gross, like almost 300 million domestic. That's something. That is certainly something. But everything else was just there. So let's talk about them. About My Father. Ugh. This whole movie, it didn't feel theatrical in the slightest. It just felt like a sitcom. Like, this could have been a sitcom, and no one would have, and nothing would have changed. But instead, they decided to make it a movie for some reason, and no one showed up. Opened with like 4.3 million, made like 12 million domestic, 17 million worldwide. Like, this is just like, there is a lot of movies this summer where I'm just like, did this really need to be in theaters? Like, you could have put this on Netflix or something, and it probably, more people probably would have seen it there than in the cinema. But I mean, I know it's important for movies to have a theatrical release because it helps it out in the long run. But no one was gonna pay money to see this on the big screen. Nobody. No, it didn't look like, it didn't feel like an event in the slightest, and as a result, no one showed up. So, yeah, that was About My Father. And then we got Candidar from Gerard Butler. This movie had like, it didn't have like any real marketing surrounding it, and it only up with like 2.3 million, made like 4.8 million total, which is pretty abysmal even for Gerard Butler standards, because he has a following, he has a fan base, but they just did not show up to see this. They did not care. They showed up to see Plane, but this, nah, they no showed. So yeah, this was definitely one of those movies that was only put in theaters just to like, I guess, pump up its PVOD release instead of just going straight to PVOD. So yeah, moving right along to The Machine, and this movie, ugh, like I didn't expect this to do well, like, at all. Like, it had like no mass appeal really. I mean, the only people who gave a damn about this were like Burt Kirchner fans, and that was it. And that's a very, very, very small audience. And the movie opened with like 5 million, made like 10 million on a budget of 20 million. Like, oof. And its run was very front loaded too. Like, it just, look at that, 66, 66, 90, 63. It was gone before June even ended. And look at that opening weekend number, like, fell 34% Friday to Saturday. That's when I knew this movie was not gonna, have any longevity. So yeah. So really, this movie was only made for Burt Kirchner fans and no one else, and those were the only people who showed up, clearly. And yeah, it just bombed. And then we got You Hurt My Feelings, which, I'm not sure, like, I don't know the budget for this. I can't imagine it was like so big. I mean, I could try looking it up off screen really fast as I can with one hand. Um, okay, ugh, this is being stupid. You Hurt My Feelings. Was it a hit? Yes or no? Well, there's no budget. It's not showing up, so I can't really say if it's a hit or not. But I don't think it was. It only made like, what, less than $5 million domestically. Had an opening weekend like 1.3 million. Like, that's not great, but you know, this movie was never going to just be a big hit anyway. So I guess for A24 standards, considering like they're obviously smaller studio compared to like the big studios out there, it's fine for their standards, but overall it just, no one really cared about it. And that was really it. So that was May. A whole lot of filler. Like, there's only like three movies people gave a damn about in some way. They were Guardians 3, Fast X, and Little Mermaid. Everything else existed. And that's all I'm going to say about all the rest of the main movies. Now we move on to June. We're skipping past June 2nd, June 9th, June 16th. Here we go. The Blackening. Now, this technically didn't do terrible because the movie was like very, very, very low budget. So it wasn't gonna take much for it to break even, but still, I really thought it would do a lot better. Like, I thought, it would, I thought it would really benefit from its release date because this movie came out on the Juneteenth weekend, and I was thinking, okay, obviously this is, Juneteenth is a very important day, for African Americans, right? The end of slavery, right? So I thought maybe that would help this movie a little bit, but not really. It didn't. So I was like a little surprised. But yeah, only made like 6 million opening weekend, like 17 million domestically. So it's just kind of like, well, I wouldn't call it a bust. It only cost like $5 million. So it's not a bust, but I wouldn't call it a hit. I wouldn't really call it a strong hit. So yeah, it just, honestly, at the time, it was like the most successful movie that come out on June 16th because Elemental and The Flash did so terrible on their opening weekends. But at least Elemental was able to save itself, and that became the big hit of June 16th eventually. So Yeah. Moving right along to No Hard Feelings. This one is kind of complicated because on one hand, like compared to its budget, it didn't do that hot. I mean, it didn't do awful, but it didn't do great. Cost 45 million, opened with like 15 million, made like 50 million total, 83 million worldwide. That's pretty meh. But for R-rated comedies, like in the last few years, this is golden. Which should really tell you how far the genre has fallen when it comes to box office. Which is so weird because like a decade ago, like R-rated comedies, they were killing it at the box office. And then like in the mid 2010s, they just died off completely, and I find it really odd. But with No Hard Feelings, considering like the kind of controversial premise of 30 something Jennifer Lawrence who's like dating, I'm using that in quotations, dating, like fake dating, like this like 19-year-old kid. Like some might call that very questionable, but I mean, I've seen age gaps that are like way worse than that. I mean, this isn't like Transformers 4 where you literally had like a grown dude who was in a relationship with an underage girl, and they try to use like the Romeo and Juliet laws to like justify it, which apparently the law they had was wrong. I found out like later on that it was like bullshit. And even if it was true, like no one, it would still be frowned upon. But this is nowhere near as bad as that. At least in my opinion, I don't think it's as bad as that. But in the movie, it could have done a lot worse, but it did meh. That's how it describes performance, just meh, which is the best, which is like the best we got so far. Which I believe actually it's the highest grossing movie I'm going to be talking about in this video, which should really set the really set the mood for the rest of the video. All right, what's next? Asteroid City, Wes Anderson's latest movie. So, this movie had a very strong limited release. Opened like 6 theaters, had like 853,000, like 142K per theater average, which I believe is the best of the year. It's a fantastic average. And then opening weekend, or at least when it went wide, had an open with 9 million, which is the best ever for a Wes Anderson movie. I'm like, okay, this might go somewhere. And then it didn't. It was kind of front loaded a little bit, at least for the movie it is. Fell like 53%, and then it boom, just fell off from there. I believe it went to Peacock like a little bit after it released. So it only made like 28 million domestic, 51 million worldwide on a budget. I believe it was like 25 million. So it did moderate. Like it didn't do like horrible or anything. And the thing is, like the market's been real tough for movies like this. Like adult, like award centric movies like this. Like it's been rough. I mean, just look at what happened the end of last year. All the Oscar bait movies that bombed, all of them, one after another. It was rough to watch, but this, it did fine. It just did meh, just moderate. But obviously, like June 23rd, I imagine like for both movies, the studio expected to do just a little better. But the thing is, the whole box office was just absolutely depressed at this point. I mean, like Across the Spider-Verse regained the #1 spot that weekend in its fourth weekend. Like when that happens, that's a bad sign. And then The Flash fell, it cratered. So like those were like the real stories of that weekend, and the whole weekend was just, it was sad. And it only got sadder after that with June 30th. So we're not talking about Indiana Jones. Saving up for part 3. What we will talk about is Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken, which is definitely definitely the biggest bomb I will talk about in this video. But the thing is, it only costs like $70 million, which sure is kind of expensive, but not really. Like it's not like ultra expensive. It's not like it costs like $200 million, like Elemental or something like that. So it's, you know, I don't know if I call it like, yeah, it just wasn't expensive, but it wasn't like ultra expensive. But man, this movie did horrible. Holy shit! It opened like 5.5 million. That's probably as much as I thought it. I thought it would have made that much like opening day, but no, that was the whole 3 days, right there. And it only made like 15 million domestic, 43 million worldwide on a budget of 70 million. That is terrible. That is disastrous. That's the worst performance ever for a DreamWorks movie, which is real shocking because like last year they did great. They were on a bit of a comeback. I mean, you had like The Bad Guys, which did very well, and then you got Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which had a slow start, but then people discovered it. People were like, "Damn, this movie's so good," and that word of mouth spread, and then it had legs, like a long legs for weeks and weeks and weeks, and ended up being a massive hit. And then you have this, and like all that momentum was dashed. All that momentum just ended right there. So yeah, that kind of stings. But DreamWorks, they have like Trolls 3, they have Kung Fu Panda 4. As long as they make Shrek 5, I mean, they tease Shrek 5 at the end of Puss in Boots 2. If they make that, then they'll be fine. Like, DreamWorks will live. They can survive Ruby Gilman Teenage Crack, and they'll be fine. But yeah, this is definitely not something they want to be remembered for, like, at all. So, yeah, oof. Big oof for DreamWorks there with Ruby Gilman. What's next? Past Lives. If I mean, I guess this. Let me see how expensive this movie was, because sometimes I don't see like the budget for these movies is not on here. Past Lives. How much did this cost? 12 million. Oh no. Okay, so this definitely wasn't a hit. But it never really had like a wide start. It was kind of like like only opened like 900 theaters like total. Like it had a really solid limited start, but then it never really got better after that. It never really gained momentum. It just kind of existed until it didn't anymore. So it only made like 10 million domestic, 14 million worldwide on a budget of like 12 million. That's not good at all. But the thing is, this movie, it has like really strong, has really strong reviews. So maybe it'll become like a bit of like a cult classic, or like it'll find an audience later down the line. It might have already has an audience later now, but yeah, it didn't do well theatrically. And the thing is, a good amount of these movies that didn't do well, hell, even for like this year, a lot of the movies that didn't do well, it wasn't because of quality, because there've been plenty of good movies that just didn't succeed for a variety of reasons. And it's sad because I want good movies to succeed. I don't want bad movies succeeding because that's bad for the industry. Like that just leads to like more bad movies getting greenlit. So yeah, it's a shame good movies have to suffer, but that's just how it is sometimes, and it sucks. And that's the end of June. Yeah, so June, the thing is, it started out so good with Spider-Verse. It gave me such false hope. And then the rest of the month happened, and I'm just like, oh my god, summer's a disaster. Like, what is going on? Like, it just spiraled after that. But thankfully, July happened and things got a lot better. But July wasn't immune to failure, because we got to talk about Joyride here. This thing, Joyride. The thing is, I expected a lot better from this. I thought it had like a good reception when it was like, I think it was like South by Southwest. I was thinking, okay, maybe this could be like a sleeper hit. Maybe this could, do solid. Not spectacular, but do solid business. That did not happen. Only opened like 5.8 million, made like 12 million domestic, 15 million worldwide. Yikes. Oof. That is no good. And the thing is, like, this came out like what, 2 weeks after No Hard Feelings? And No Hard Feelings ended up being like the more successful movie, but even then, that wasn't really much of a hit. And I thought this would be a hit, and it wasn't. So I'm like, I guess the R-rated comedy is still dead. it's still, um, it's still in a coma, basically. Um, but this movie, it did have a good reception, so maybe it'll gain an audience later on down the line. But yeah, no one cared to see this movie on the big screen. I can't really blame people for not watching this on the big screen that much because it didn't feel theatrical. It didn't feel like, man, I gotta pay like $10 to $15 to watch this on the big screen. No one was thinking that. So yeah, not surprised. I'm not super, like, I'm both surprised and unsurprised that it did as poor as it did. Like, I thought it would do better, but in my heart, I was like, I don't think this is gonna do well. And then it didn't do well. So, yeah. Now, we can really skip the rest. I guess I can mention Miracle Club real quick. But the thing is, I didn't make a prediction video on it. So, it didn't do well. And I'm not gonna say anything more about that. So, we're gonna skip the rest of July because there's nothing else to talk about. Skip the beginning of August because I already covered those two movies, Ninja Turtles and Meg 2. Now we get to the rest of August. Like, when the peak of the month is the beginning of the month, that is no good. That is, we're gonna be in. We're gonna be in for a bad time for the month. And like the bad time started on August 11th with these two movies. First, Jules, a movie that just popped on the calendar out of thin air. There's several movies here that did that, and it bugged the hell out of me. So yeah, and this is just one of them, and it only opened like 889,000, made like less than 2 million domestic, less than 2 million total. Like, what do you want me to say about this? No one knew it existed. I didn't know it existed. It released. It did poorly, and it was gone pretty much. So yeah, like, that's really it. It's nothing interesting to say. Now, Last Voyage of Demeter, there is something interesting to say about this because this movie really proves that Dracula is box office poison. Because earlier this year, you had Renfield with Nicolas Cage, that tanked big time, and then you had this, which wasn't as expensive but still did terrible too. Almost like 6.5 million, made like 13 million domestically, 20 million total on a budget of 45 million. Oof. And this movie had like really nothing going for it. I mean, like, there was no hype, there was no buzz going into it. Like, it was like, even if like this was like during a time where like the writer strike, and oh, fun fact, the writer strike will end at midnight today, or tomorrow technically. So no more writer strike to deal with. Woohoo! The actor strike's still going on, so that's still a problem. But hey, progress. Where we like, some of the mess has been cleaned up, but a good amount of it's still there. But with Last Voyage of Demeter, even if there were no strikes, it wouldn't have saved this movie. Like, no one would have cared about this movie, like, at all. So yeah, it just completely just, no one gave a damn. Simple as that. And I completely predicted it because, just again, there was no energy going into it, and when I can feel when a movie has no energy going into it, and when that happens, I'm like, this movie's gonna tank, isn't it? And then when it tanks, I'm like, well, there it is. So yeah. Yeah, so that was August 11th. Very much a nothing weekend. You got August 18th, which was better, but that's that's literally saying nothing. And I might as well mention Back on the Strip, a movie I made a prediction video about, even though they never revealed the numbers at all. It's very similar to. I gotta go back to March. Another movie I did a prediction video on. Freaking, where is it? A Spinning Gold. I made a prediction video on that, assuming box office numbers would come out, and they never did. They never did. So the same thing happened again with freaking. Gotta scroll all the way back down. With freaking Back on the Strip, and now I feel like a goober for even making that video. So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that. But Strays, that is a movie that its box office was revealed, and I imagine Warner Brothers wish they hid these numbers because they are not good at all. Because it only made it opened with 8 million, made 23 million domestic, 34 million worldwide, and a bunch of 46 million. Terrible. And the thing is, I thought this movie had potential. I thought it would do well because the premise seemed funny enough. And it had no direct competition. August historically has been a good time to release R-rated comedies, but this movie it it just didn't work out. And I don't know, maybe apparently some reasons were the fact that maybe it didn't try hard enough leaning into the R-rated side. The whole R-rated thing is the poster is just oh, it's R-rated. It's very clear about that. It's very similar to what happened with Good Boys, where that movie's whole gimmick is hey, this is R-rated, but the funny thing is the leads of the movie, they can't see their own movie because it's R-rated. That was funny. That worked. People were damn, I should watch that. And people did watch that. But for this, with dogs, no one it just wasn't happening. I don't know. I guess this is more proof that the R-rated comedy is in a coma. And I don't see that changing at all. I don't know if anything could really save the R-rated comedy. I feel maybe it's too little too late at this point. Because there's also the fact that I feel most R-rated comedy you see nowadays is online. You can watch it online for free without going anywhere. You can just look at it on your phone, on YouTube, or really anywhere. You don't need, I guess people are I can just get the same amount of comedy for free instead of paying to see it in a theater. So maybe that's the big thing that's killed the R-rated comedy genre. Or the fact that the movies just aren't that good. There's that too. But yeah, Strays tanked. I didn't expect it to tank, but it did. So yeah, and I feel maybe the movie would have done better if the writer's strike didn't happen, because they would have put this on talk shows and whatnot, really boost its profile a little bit. But you couldn't do talk shows during the writer's strike. But now they're coming back, and I'm not excited at all. I was actually glad there were no talk shows during the writer's strike. So yeah, so August 18th, ick. That whole weekend was ick. And so was the last weekend of August. 3 of the 4 weekends of August were just terrible. Just nothing positive. They were just a complete waste. And there's a lot of movies to go over here, so let's Golda. This movie had no energy surrounding it, no buzz. It was from a distributor that's made next to no hits. I don't think they've had a single hit. Let me see. Yeah, they haven't had a single hit. So I'm not shocked that this did so poorly. Oh, 1.6 million, maybe less than 5 million total. No one knew this. No one cared about this movie, and as a result, no one watched it. That's literally. I know I'm kind of repeating myself, but I can't help it. A lot of these movies are kind of in the same ballpark of like there's not much for me to say, but the fact that it came out, no one cared, and that was it. Like I can't help it because that's what happened. Now, Gran Turismo, I do have something to say about this. So, Gran Turismo, uh, this movie was weird because it was supposed to come out on the 11th, but then it got changed to the 25th because of the writer strike and actor strikes. Because you couldn't have like the stars promote it, obviously. What Sony tried to do was have it have like previews on the 11th and the 18th, like those 2 weekends, before coming out on the 25th, so it could gradually build word of mouth. Like that was the plan. And on paper, it seemed like a good plan, but execution didn't help the movie at all. Because it opened with like 17 million, although this number is super misleading because it really opened with like 12 something million, because like 5 million of that 17 was those 2 weekend previews for like the 11th and the 18th. Like those previews were thrown into the Friday number, and not to mention the regular Thursday previews. All that was thrown into the Friday number, which explains why it fell 52% on Saturday. Ugh. And I mean, Sunday there was like National Cinema Day, which I thought would be very. I thought the whole weekend would be weird, but I mean, it did help pretty much all movies out there. But Gran Turismo, not really. No. And it felt like 62% because, again, those previews. And it's only made like 41 million domestically and 110 million worldwide on a budget of like $60 million, which is not great. I can't imagine Sony wanted this to happen. I imagine they thought this movie would like play out for a long time, but it feels like the only people who really wanted to watch this movie were Gran Turismo fans. And that was really it. So, yeah, like it really underperformed. And there's not much else to say, but yeah. Maybe if the actor strike never happened, maybe if it opened when it was supposed to, it would have done better. But yeah, I feel like the preview strategy kind of did this movie in, because I feel like you risk by doing that, by having your movie like preview like so far in advance, you risk, peaking too early in terms of hype. This is what happened with the first Shazam, because I remember that movie had like a showing like 2 weeks early, and everyone was like talking about it and buzzing about it. But by the time the movie actually came out, that buzz was gone pretty much. Like that buzz kind of evaporated, and the same thing more or less happened here. So yeah, nothing else to really say, but I could definitely label it an underperformer. Uh, trying to. Okay, we're back. All right. So what's next? We're almost done here. There's like 3 more movies to go. Maybe 3, 2, 4. It doesn't matter. We're almost done. The Hill. Again, no one cared. Over like 2.3, made like 7.5 million. Like whatever. Like it was a movie that was just there to fill up the calendar slot, just to be released theatrically, just to make like maybe a couple dollars, and that's all it was. So yeah, nothing to say about that. Then Jurassic Park got re-released again, and I might as well talk about it. It didn't go great compared to like other re-releases we've had. It only opened with like 1.7 million. I mean, for comparison, like Titanic re-release, like earlier this year, opened with like 6 million, and then the Avatar re-release last year was like 10 million. I think it was 10 million. I'm not sure, but I think it was close to 10 million. But this, like, obviously, there was no point in watching it on the big screen again, because this movie's been widely available for so long and already got a big re-release 10 years ago, 2013, to for the 20th anniversary. So it was kind of pointless to watch it again. So yeah, so not exactly. So yeah, it just kind of happened. Retribution, okay. Liam Neeson's latest action movie, which did about as poor as his other recent action movies, opened with like 3.5 million, made like 6.9 million. Lol. The movie, its legs. Look at these legs. Oof. Nothing to say about that. And like, I'm not shocked about this because Liam Neeson's action movies, like, they used to be big. They used to bring in money. Like, they used to have like a clear following, but that following has dwindled like ever since like 2014, and now these movies can't even make like double digits, and it's really sad to watch. And it just made people, I remember like people just going, Liam, I think it's time to retire from the genre. I think it's time to stop. Like, just stop, Liam, please. For the sake of your legacy, stop making these movies. So yeah, like Retribution, yeah, like, I wasn't shocked that it did as poorly as it did. So yeah, that was August 25th. Ich. That's how I would describe that whole weekend. And then finally, we have Bottoms here, which, considering its low profile, it didn't do that bad, really. It uh had a per theater average of like 46,000, which is okay. That had an opening of like 3 million, and now it's reached like 11 million. I mean, that's not a great number like by any means, but it could have been a lot worse compared to like other movies this year, or like other like limited releases this year. It could have been much worse. So the fact that it reached double digits, I mean, that's good, but yeah, this isn't exactly a spectacular run. But I can definitely see this movie gaining a following, like once it like hits like, I guess, like PVOD and like streaming, like once it has like a wider audience. Oh, its budget was like 11 million, so it's definitely not a success. But I imagine this will get a much wider audience down the line. I feel like it will definitely get a following. But yeah, that was summer. Or at least that was like all of the all the small losers and the mediocre performers. Yeah, it was kind of uninteresting. It's not my fault so many uninteresting movies came out during summer. Like, all the important movies were either successes or hard failures. So yeah. So there's just a lot of filler. Like, this is the filler chapter of the story. Like, yeah, like strong beginning, and then the filler, and then the strong end, which will be part three. Because part three, we won't have that many movies to talk about, but the movies we're going to be talking about, oh, I have a lot to say about those movies. Because then we're going over all the big losers, all the expensive losers. And I might as well just tell you what those movies are now. Fast X, Little Mermaid, um, let's see, Transformers: Rise of the Beast, The Flash, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. What else? Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. Scrolling down, Haunted Mansion, and then last but not least, Blue Beetle. Though I'm gonna be talking about those in detail the next episode, well, the next part, the final part of my summer recap. So stay tuned for that video. So yeah, that's it. That's all. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, turn on notifications, share the whole drill. You want to check out more videos like this, got a playlist on the homepage. All previous recap videos I made this year or the past few years. Or you want to see like my part one of my summer 2023 recap, you want to watch that or any other recaps I've done, you can go right ahead. There's also the canceled series where I go over all the movies that were supposed to come out but didn't. I have 207. Was it 208? It was 208. 208 videos out now, though I have to make 209, like my 209th one. Because Paw Patrol 3 was announced for 2026, and I'm just like, well, shoot. Might as well make a video about that. Why not, right? So I'll have to make that later. So right now there's 208 episodes. So if you want to watch any of them from beginning to now, you want to binge them all from beginning to now, I highly encourage you to do that. So go do it. There's also box office predictions where I predict box office for movies. Every movie I really covered in this video, I made prediction videos for. So you want to watch any of those videos, on the playlist. You want to watch any. Oh shoot, clicked the wrong one. You want to watch any of the past prediction videos I made, like on the channel the past few years. You can go right ahead. And yeah, that's it. That's all. I am out. Goodbye.